Bhagavatyutamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Nigamakapaturgaritam Param Shukamakaram Itadvavi Samitam Pibata Bhagavatam Rasham Alayam Mahora Sikabhivakam Krishna Swadamapagate Damagana Hisha Karunashta Dushamasha Parana Kodakam Famapiyadavi Vishuddham Vibu Samapyanam Pirambidaxaram Prakyaya Mohora Tatmanam Sanklation Nirvana Santi Nanyataham Om Maganati Mirandasyangarangana Salakya Chaksurin Miritam Yanatajmai Shri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yanabhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaparandikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamanam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagatatam Sahagana Ganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shiveshakan Vitamsta Om Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Praskata Desahani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good morning. Motivational Monday. This will be Gajendra Lila part no less than 144. That's a new record. We're only on the 9th and 10th of 28 prayers of Gajendra from the 8th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We can easily envisage this series going on up to at least 200 episodes. We're diving deep. We're immersed in the nectar of Gajendra Lila. I might also mention that today is the day, October 21st. It's associated with my birthday 78 years ago. But honestly, I think in terms of significant happenings in the life of True to us, the month of May would be first and foremost. It was in May of 1970 that my spiritual life began. In May of 1970, I got initiated by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada as his disciple. That's when my real spiritual life started. I got my physical body from my parents, my mom and dad, on October 21st, 1946. But more importantly, I got my second birth, my spiritual birth, and I got my spiritual father in May of 1970. And then you fast forward to May of 1971, and the second most important incident of my life occurred. And that was, I believe it was on May 17th, 1971, that I tied the nuptial ties with Vaibhavi Devi Dasi. And we've been linked at the hip ever since. And that's been my great good fortune. I don't know how much or how fervently she would concur with you, but it's certainly my great fortune. I got my better half in May of 1971. We'd known each other, or a couple of years before that. In fact, we met in Singapore in 1969, traveled together to Australia. We joined the temple and lived separately in the single men's ashram, I and her in the single woman's ashram. But some or other, by May of 1971, Krishna had put some good sense in my head, helped me to realize that I did not want to continue in my life, in my Krishna conscious career, without this incredibly talented and dedicated, faithful woman by my side. So I proposed marriage, which took place in May of 1970 and 1971. So although I took my physical birth in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, 78 years ago, my father was Eugene Cunningham Worden. My mother's maiden name was White, Julia White. I had a younger brother who came along later, who is no longer in this world. He passed away sometime around 2005, I think, 2004. Cousins, Jimmy and Jerry, uncle, James B., aunt, Catherine, I think most of whom have passed on now. So And I had no children, not feeling up to the onus of fatherhood. Never had any regrets about that whatsoever. Agni Dev was, we were talking about kids the other day. Agni Dev is such a great storyteller. You hang on every one of his words. So I mentioned how I never dared to take the plunge, the gamble of having kids, because I thought that after you pour so much into them, they are just as likely to walk away and spurn you as to follow your good instructions. And I think part of that comes from my behavior towards my parents. I was not the most disobedient of children, but neither was I the most obedient either. I questioned everything growing up in the 60s. That was a characteristic of my whole generation. But Agni Dev told in compelling terms how, as a youngster, he spent lots and lots of times with his son. I don't know what his son's name is. I do know he lives in Oregon. He does very well materially. He's got a wife. He's happily married. He's well employed. Makes a lot of money. Agni Dev told about how he used to read to him from the scriptures, the Krishna book and the Bhagavatam, and they used to spend hours and hours together doing kirtan. And Agni Dev wanted nothing more than for his son to become at least favorable towards Krishna consciousness, warm, if not on fire, like Agni Dev is, at least warm, following somewhat in the footsteps of his father. Agni Dev said it did not happen. Agni Dev had a heart episode in Australia about 10 years ago. And his son, who's a very loving son, a very caring son, let that be said, flew all the way to Australia and told his dad, you have to come and live with me for 1 year while you recover. Don't do any traveling, don't do any singing, don't stress yourself. Give yourself 1 year. So Agni Dev went and lived with him for 1 year. That was very, very kind of his son. It was a good respite for Agni Dev. However, Agni Dev said he hadn't got the slightest interest in Krishna consciousness. Not a whit, in spite of all that Agni Dev had poured in. Nice guy by material standards, good, honest, hardworking, good husband, good father, good employer, employee, et cetera, but no interest whatsoever in Krishna consciousness. And that would have broken my heart. Had I been the father, I would just be like, so whenever my thoughts would gravitate towards my offspring, the product of my loins, and to think that he had totally become disinterested in that which defined my whole life, my passionate service in the mission of Prabhupada and Krishna, I would feel a great sense of disappointment. So I have no regrets. I didn't have the father gene, and I have no regrets that I didn't produce any children. In fact, Agni Dev said as a postscript to this story that his son's passion, rather than being Krishna, is for sports. And so he would keep a television in every room, and every television would be turned to some hockey, basketball, football. No matter where you went in the house, it was sports, droney, nothing about Krishna. Agni said his son once said to him during this 1 year of recuperation, Dad, seems like I've lost you. And Agni Dev said, it seems like I've lost you. Anyway, be that as it may, our topic today is from the nose of Brahma. We run across these two words in the 10th verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Aischarya, which means the Lord is not ordinary. He does amazing, astounding things. People have this so-called explanation for the creation of the universe. It's called evolution. They postulate that there's no intelligent designer, there's no supreme creator, there's no benevolent father. Everything evolves, so to speak, from inert chemicals to the life forms that we see today. This goes against all observation, all experience. We never, ever have an instance since the beginning of the world where matter, unconscious, dull, dead matter, all of a sudden becomes aware of itself. It starts to organize itself from lower levels to higher levels. Forget about it. You walk out of a room, you don't go back into the room. You might leave a little, you might just for the sake of this experiment, you might you right, let's say rather than walking out of a room which is very tidy and organized, leave a little something lying around. You don't have to leave it a mess or a dump, but leave some paper shuffled or something, a rug that might need slightly vacuuming. But leave it a little untidy and walk out of that room, lock it up, leave it for 6 weeks or a couple of months, walk back in and tell me if that room has gone from a lower state of organization to a higher state of organization, or whether it's gone from a lower state of organization to an even lower state of organization. And this latter is the case. That will always be the case. Matter devolves. Matter goes to less and less states of organization left on its own without the hand of spirit. When the hand of spirit is there, when there's the superior energy, when there's the input of an intelligent, personable living being, then we see things going from a lower state of organization to a higher state of organization. So the evolutionists would have us believe what, in my opinion, is an absurd explanation for the manifestation of this universe. Absurd. That matter could all of us somehow or other, without the touch of spirit, become conscious of itself. By definition, consciousness comes from spirit. Consciousness does not come from matter. Okay? QED, Om Tat Sat, thanks a lot. Now, the so-called secularists, atheists, and materialists would then come back and say, but your explanation is fantastic. To think that, from Krishna came Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu went into a corner of the spiritual sky, lay down in his gigantic form on Anantashesha, a multi-headed serpent. And as he exhaled from his mouth and from his pores came millions and millions of universes like little golden eggs. And then Vishnu further expanded. Mahavishnu entered into each every universe as Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And because of the presence of Garbhodakshay Vishnu in these little tiny egg-like universes, they began to expand and grow. And then again, Garbhodakshay Vishnu further expanded himself as those universes became populated with 8,400,000 species of life. The Lord then, for a third time, expanded himself into the hearts of every living being as Kshirodakshay Vishnu. The materialists, the so-called scientists would say, Charu, are you serious? Are we supposed to believe that? That is fantastic. If you ask me to choose between a creator who is fantastic, dazzling, brilliant, beyond our ability to conceive him, and some pathetic, self-serving, envious, selfish, anthropomorphic view of the universe, I'll take fantastic over absurd every time. Thank you very much. You may have heard this story before, but the museum in Springville, right next door to us, is, I think, the oldest museum in Utah and the most revered, has a reputation. They do a lot of community involvement programs. And one time I was on a panel, Religion and Art. There was a Mormon there, there was a pagan there, there was a Presbyterian, 5 or 6 of us. And I had a slideshow to accompany you speak for 5 minutes and then open up for questions. And so I did my slideshow. And during the question period, someone asked, what's the significance of a peacock? So I said, the peacock is the national bird of India. Krishna is always seen with a peacock feather in his hair, in his crown. The place where Krishna appeared, our version of Bethlehem, it's called Vrindavan, village 90 kilometers south of Delhi. It has a lot of forests even to this day. Vrindavan means forests of Tulsi, and to this day, In spite of a lot of recent development, there's still many forested areas of Vrindavan. It's a 32 square mile area. And in every tree, there's peacocks. But aside from that, I always tell people that with its indigo chest and its beautiful tail feathers and the little, whatever you call it, on the top of its head, 3 or 4 feathers that look so cute. The peacock is the best argument against spontaneous creation, against evolution, against the Big Bang theory. I was feeling somewhat emboldened. And so in front of this audience, in answer to the question, what's the significance of the peacock? I should have known when to stop. I should have, having said sufficient, I should have just zipped it up and stopped. But have you ever noticed you always get in trouble? You make your case, you're feeling so good that you've slam dunked him. And when you should shut up, you say one more thing. In other words, and at that point, you cross the line, you rub people the wrong way, and you get yourself in trouble. Even though up to that point, you've made a brilliant response, nobody's going to say everything. Everyone's going to be happy. Everyone's going to be content. No feathers are going to be ruffled, but you can't help yourself. You can't help just rubbing it in a little bit extra and saying that one extra sentence. Have you ever discovered that? Like whenever I'm having a heated back and forth between somebody in speaking or in writing, I always find that before I hit send to the email, I look it over and I take away the last sentence. And the correspondence ends up being much more respectful, much more cordial, much more productive. If you just go back and before you send it, erase the last sentence. You didn't need that sentence. You made your case. That last sentence is only for your ego to rub it in, to pound your opponent into the dust, and they never react well to that. So anyway, I should have shut up, but I went on to say, anyone who believes that the universe was created without reference to intelligent designer is too dumb to breathe. Now, in all fairness, a statement like that in Utah Valley would usually be not only not challenged, but mostly appreciated. Not in this case, however, I misjudged my audience. Out of the 60 or 70 people in the audience, there were 17 members of the Utah County Atheist Society. So a spokesman stood up and he ranted and railed, called me names and everything for about 5 minutes. I made a false move. I'd spoken too much, should have bit my tongue. It should be noted, however, that although this spokesman for the Utah County Atheist Society had everybody's undivided attention for a good full 5 minutes, he used it to hurl insults at me when in fact he had a golden opportunity to explain, in fact, how I was wrong and how everything did come from matter, from a primordial soup, or from an explosion. It's interesting to note that he did not take the time to make his case in favor of a secularistic, materialistic, mechanistic creation of the universe. So what we have here are some terms that direct us towards the fantastic and away from the absurd. But first, let me share with you the latest creation of these two verses, 9 and 10, in the 3rd chapter of the 8th canto. I created a poetic version of it. And so, by way of reminding ourselves, and after all, the Bhagavatam is written in poetry. So to take that poetry of the Bhagavatam and make it your own, claim it with your own poetic creative powers is actually very bona fide. So this is my claiming these verses for myself, and it also hopefully challenge you and inspires you. I know that Ballava Chandras loves to render things into verse, and Natasha does occasionally, Carmen does also. Rob no longer seems to be joining us, also used to punctuate every session with a few pithy phrases. So here it goes once again. This is a version of the 8th and 9th verses, 3rd chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam, the prayers of Gajendra. Krishna, the supreme Godhead, no birth, no death, no flaw, no defect, no illusion, in human-like form, he's the one I respect. Rama, Krishna avatars descending down low, showing the way, helping the soul to grow. He manifests on this earthly plane to restore dharma again and again. He's a supreme Lord, defying comprehension, his actions are divine, beyond the human dimension, saving the devotees, lifting them to the light, annihilating demons, ending their blight. Both achieve liberation of transcendental fate. The devotees go straight to the Lord's abode, while the other enters the impersonal zone. Don't mistake his actions for worldly affairs. He's near guna, untouched by material snares. His names, like Krishna and Ram, hold power untold. Chanting frees the soul, breaks illusions hold. Ajamil proved it, his story is well known. By uttering Narayan, his spirit was shown. The path to transcendence, escaping the night. Chant Hare Krishna, everything's bright. Though it Though he walks among us in human disguise, don't be fooled by appearances. Open your eyes. He's not bound by Maya, the cosmic play. He's the puppet master guiding the way. His form is divine. His name is the key to unlocking the truth and setting you free. So rise above the mundane, the fleeting, the fake. Embrace the divine. Chant Hare Krishna for goodness sake. Namo Nama Parashaya. This means that as fantastic as the demigods are, Lord Brahma, the chief of all the demigods, engineers and creates the entire universe. Indra is in charge of rain. Shiva invokes universal destruction at the time of cosmic annihilation. Varuna is in charge of the tides. Chandra, the moon, which gives life to the vegetables. Vivishwan, the sun god. These are empowered living beings with energies beyond our capability to understand. And once Prabhupada said that of the 33 million demigods that manage each and every universe, it would take us 100 lifetimes to even begin to understand the least of them. And yet it's said that Namo Tashmai Prishtaya Parashaya, Krishna stands in a category all by himself, superior to the demigods. Whenever the demigods get in over their heads, whenever there's a challenge to the universal order, the establishment that they can't deal with, they approach Krishna. They go to Brahma. They appoint Brahma as their spokesman. Brahma goes to the shores of the ocean and speaks to the Lord Vishnu, who is reclining on the island called Shwetadvip. So on one particular occasion in ancient history, Brahma speaks to Vishnu across the ocean of milk, saying, we've seen inauspicious omens recently, bad signs and portents. The sky is dark. The moon doesn't rise. The sun is eclipsed. The atmosphere is filled with smoke, covered with an unnatural sort of pitch dark, tar-like, impenetrable darkness. And we have got the news. Those who have looked into the future have told us that two divine personalities, in fact, associates of yours, gatekeepers in the spiritual world named Jai and Vijay, have just been cursed by the four Kumaras to come down on earth. And when they were offered the option of taking 7 births as devotees or 3 births as demons, they chose the 3 births of demons so they could come back to you all the more quickly. So they're about to manifest in the first of their 3 births as demons and create havoc amongst us. They're going to appear due to an untimely copulation between Kashyapa and his wife Aditi. Their conception is going to take place at an inauspicious moment, at a time when conceptions are never supposed to be undertaken. They're now sheltering within the womb of Aditi. We anticipate hard times ahead we anticipate, we think that the smoke-filled, inky black tar-like sky is an ominous sign of a violent future for the earth. The Lord, is there anything you can do to help us counteract this curse which is about to manifest? Now, the older brother, the first one who would take both, is Hiranyakashipu. No, I'm sorry, Hiranyaksha. And Hiranyaksha, his unique, the way that he's going to disturb the universe is that he's going to prospect, he's going to dig deep below the surface of the earth, disturb the inner equilibrium of the earth, and cause it to fall into the muck at the bottom of the Garbhodak ocean. So in response, Brahma's praying to the Lord. Now, it's said the Lord moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. He plants his footstep on the sea and rides upon the storm. Deep and unfathomable minds, never failing skill. He treasures up his bright designs and works his never failing will. Ye fearful saints, for his courage sake, the clouds you so much dread are full of mercy and will break in blessings on your head. Judge not the Lord by feeble sense, but trust him for his grace. Behind a frowning providence, he hides a smiling face. His purposes will ripen fast, unfolding every hour. The bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. Blind unbelief is sure to err and scan his work in vain. God is his own interpreter, and he will make him plain. So Brahma has just finished his prayers, and the Lord hasn't responded. The Lord didn't acknowledge his presence, didn't respond, didn't clear up his doubts, didn't say anything to put the demigod's fears at rest. But what did happen, the Lord moves in a mysterious way, was that out of the nose of Brahma comes this little creature, microscopic creature. And Brahma's like, what is this, and what's it got to do with what I just said? So the creature first then grows right before Brahma and the demigods. He grows to become hand size, then he becomes fist size, then he becomes size of a human, then he becomes the size of an elephant, and then he begins to ascend, flying in the sky. And the demigods are turning to Lord Brahma. They said, what is this? And Brahma says, I don't know. And they said, well, it came from your nose. You should know. And Brahma said, I don't know, maybe it's a demon. Maybe in addition to Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, we got, the Lord has responded by sending us a third demon. What an unusual way of appearing. Why didn't he appear like, normal? The very bizarre nature of his appearance would seem to bode ill. But then the creature revealed himself to be in the shape of a boar, a gigantic, divine, effulgent, beautiful boar. Now, boars they're many things. They're many things, but I'm not sure beautiful would be a word you'd use to describe a boar. They have these tusks and these snouts, and they're usually quite hairy. Pigs don't have any sweat glands, and so the only way they can keep cool on a hot day is to roll in mud, swamp, dirty, wet water. That's the only way they have to. They're actually a very clean animal, but to keep themselves cool, to keep from thermohydrating, they roll in muddy water, and so they're always dirty. And in Vrindavan, where devotees visit regularly on pilgrimage, there are open sewers. They're about 18 inches wide, maybe 18 inches deep. And all the effluvia, the sepsis from people's stool and urine and kitchen leavings run through there. And the pigs are right down in that cavity, drinking and eating what comes through. And sometimes they'll look up at you with a big smile on their face. So there are many ways that one can describe these boars, varaha, farashti kari, but beautiful may not be the first adjective that springs to mind. And yet here was this boar, shining, effulgent, divine, beautiful. In fact, Krishna appears in every species of life. We shouldn't think that God only incarnates in human species. We are made after the image of God. We're the ones with the highest potential of all the various species of life. The humans are the ones who can awaken their God consciousness and do the needful to enlighten other living beings, to take care of the animals, to take care of the subhumans, and themselves to go back home, back to Godhead. Um, um, and so uh, this incarnation amongst the pigs, and as I said, there's incarnations in every species of life. God values every living being equally. Some may have the bodies of pigs, and some llamas, and some chickens, and some cows, and some human beings. And socially, from an anatomical point of view, there are different roles for different living beings. But from a spiritual point of view, every life form, every life force, every spark, every atma is equally beloved of Krishna. So it's important to note at this point that God incarnates in every species, even the llamas, the peacocks, the macaws, the African race. Somewhere throughout cosmic history, there has been an incarnation of God in their particular species, thus validating, thus authenticating that God loves the souls in each and every form of life. And we should comport ourselves in such a way as to never cause misery, anxiety, worry, disquiet, and suffering to the other living beings with whom we cohabit the universe. God loves it when you love his parts and parcels. Loving your neighbor as yourself is not on the same level as loving God with all your heart and all your soul and your mind. It's not the same thing. Loving your neighbor is not a substitute for loving God. There are two tracks that we have to follow. Love God, which is a distinct and separate category in and of itself, and then love your neighbor. If you minimize love of God and emphasize love of neighbor, you'll not, in fact, be able to love your neighbor, because without recognizing a supreme father of all living beings, love, universal love, is not possible. To love each and every one of your neighbors, every one of the 8,400,000 species, and every individual in each of the 8,400,000, is like you can't do that. You can't spread yourself that thin. It's not possible. Uh, it's all we can do to love our wife. It's all we can do to love our children. How are we going to love every beetle, every chicken, every peahen? That's absurd. But by loving God, the root, the father of all living, one automatically loves all the parts and parcels. So one is encouraged to love God first and foremost. This is the first commandment. And then it will automatically follow in due course that cultivating your love of God, you'll have respect for other living beings. And devotees are loath to step even on an ant. What to speak of kill a highly evolved living being like a cow or a chicken or a lamb or a goat and eat its flesh. It's unthinkable to any awakened, truly woke personality. In any case, here's the Lord appearing in what would normally be considered a lower life form, but having assumed that form to validate the race of pigs and hogs, and also having assumed that specific form because there is a specific job to be done here. The demon, Hiranyaksha, has disturbed, jolted the earth out of its orbit, caused it to fall down to the bottom of the universe. And now it's in a dirty place, and all the inhabitants are suffering like anything. So the Lord appeared as a boar with the specific purpose of diving down, just like a hog will dive down. I remember for a little while we had pot-bellied pigs way back in the 80s here. And we couldn't keep them because they would go after things in the earth, and they're really good with their snout at like causing divots in the earth. So the landscape, the lawn would be all chopped up, and almost like someone was practicing their 9-iron on the front lawn or something. And so the hog is really good at getting its snout down sort of under the surface at the roots of where the grass are, and then just creating divots and then getting at whatever's underneath. Well, this is why the Lord appeared in that specific form, because he's going to go down and sort of excavate the earth. You have to go down. The earth is like, imagine it, 50% under mud. And so in order to get the earth out of the mud, you have to go and pry and get leverage. And only the hog's form is the form which has the ability to do that. So, and then it's interesting too, because after the boar entered into the water, and remember, this is a gigantic boar, not unlike any boar that we ever known, clean, effulgent, divine, beautiful, um, sweet for the eyes to look at. This is God. This is fantastic, as opposed to absurd, ridiculous, pathetic. So that fantastic Lord appeared where from? The nose of Brahma in an unexpected way. At first, they couldn't even decipher whether he was devotee or demon. Then they couldn't decide whether he was animal or human. Then they saw he was an animal. And then they were just amazed. They were dumbstruck. They were astounded. Their hair stood on end. They got goosebumps to see that although the Lord was in the form of a hog, this was not an ordinary hog. This was not like any other hog that had ever before appeared in the history of the world. This was worshipable. This was all attractive. And then he went down and he went into the waters to get the earth. And then he shook, like how a dog shakes or how to get the water off. And that water sprinkled all the demigods. Now, when a hog who's been in this, imagine in that cavity of the sewerage of Vrindavan, were he to get up on ground level and start shaking, you would want to get away as fast as your legs could carry. You wouldn't want a single drop of that sewerage being sprinkled, spraying away from the body. You wouldn't want it, any of that to touch you. Like, yuck. But the Lord, when he comes as a hog, he is Aishwarya. He is fabulous. He shook and he sprayed the demigods with the water, and they took that water on their heads. They considered not only was the water not contaminated, but that their inner contaminations, the impurities of their hearts, were being exorcised by the drops of water that were sprinkled on them from the boar. And as soon as the drops of water from the boar touched them, they became enlightened. And they began to get confidence that, yes, this boar is the answer to Brahma's prayers. The Lord didn't say anything. He did something out of the nostril of Brahma. No sooner had he finished his prayers, and everybody's waiting for a verbal answer, the Lord unexpectedly, unpredictably responded in a different way than what they'd expected. My life is but a weaving between my Lord and me. I cannot choose the colors, but he worketh steadily. He often used sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper, not the underside. Not till the loom falls silent and the shuttle ceases to fly will Krishna unroll the canvas and reveal the reasons why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as are the threads of gold and silver in the pattern that he has planned. Don't ever second guess the Lord. You can never measure him. You can never fit him into any of your algorithms. He will always be beyond our ability to predict what he's going to do. But now, by the Lord's mercy, when the drops of sprinkled water fell on the heads of the demigods, they saw why he had appeared that way, why he'd taken that form, what it is that form was capable of doing, how that form was going to act in such a way as to save the earth. They saw everything because of the touch of the water. They saw that this is none other than Krishna, none other than Vishnu. This is the same Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, Sirabhakshaya Vishnu, coming to answer our prayers. Therefore, he is Namo Tajmai Para Ishvara. Para Ishvara. Ishvara means lords. Demigods are lords. They have vast influence over water, over fire, over air, over rainfall, over the creation itself, if you're talking about Lord Brahma. And yet Krishna is Pada. Gajendra refers to Krishna as Pada Ishwar. Gajendra is already living on the heavenly planets. He's on a first name basis with Indra, Varuna, Chandra, Kuvera. And yet when he's attacked by the elephant, there's nothing that any of the demigods can do to save him. He disregards the demigods altogether. Even considering their extraordinary, superhuman powers, Gajendra immediately calculates that the demigods cannot save him from this circumstance. And the demigods themselves see Gajendra praying to Lord Vishnu, and they step aside. They're saying, let's wait and see. If Gajendra's prayers result in Lord Vishnu coming, that will be the greatest blessing of our lives. So they're not helping Gajendra. They're rather spectating. They're keenly following the events as they transpire with the hope in their hearts that Gajendra, in his sincere supplications to the Lord, will bring the Lord, just like bringing fire from wood, that they'll bring the Lord and that the Lord will appear personally present before them. We'll end with another poetic rendition. Gajendra, king of elephants, was sporting on a heavenly planet, courting his wives in a lotus-filled lake, cavorting in the water. He snorted some honey with his trunk, and he's quite drunk. Crocodile latched onto his leg with his jaw, and though he stamped, trampled, and stampeded, he couldn't get the croc to withdraw. In this tug of war, Gajendra was losing the fight to stay upright. He's being dragged further from the shore, nagged by the reptile, and his strength was flagging day by day. Lacking the backing of the other pachyderms, Gajendra was alone in this danger zone. The water had turned to foam. His friends had flown, and there was no one to phone. Devoid of his fabled strength, at the end of his rope's length, Gajendra's hopes turned to the Lord, who awards protection to his devotees. He stopped pulling his leg, which the croc wanted to devour. He plucked with his trunk from the muck of the lake a lotus flower, seeking the Lord's power. Krishna, you're the root of creation, the fruit of the Vedas, the absolute truth that plays upon your flute, the ever-existing youth. Your lotus feet are adored by Lord Brahma, and Shiva will not leave you, not even for a beat. Your features are unlimited. You're the ingredient of all creatures, whether they have hands, claws, paws, or jaws. They are all your parts and parcels. Those who are smart, engage in your devotional service with all their hearts. You guard those who never depart from the hearth of your sheltering breast. Lord, I confess I've messed up, repressed my service, failed the test, but I'm thirsty for your mercy, which is greater than all my mistakes. I've heard that all it takes to awaken your protection is a single cry of helpless affection. Lord, in spite of my shame, I'm calling your name in the middle of the fight. Please reclaim me from the might of the crocodile's bite. When I'm released from the teeth of the clock, block ignorance in my life. Lock me under your devotional service. Lord, let my original purpose rise to the surface. I'm calling your name. I'm knocking at your door. Please keep me close from now until evermore. When the Lord heard the eloquent prayers of the elephant, he steered, grew to the spot, and he sheared the crocodile's head from his body with his chakra. When the reptile lay dead and Gajendra was shed of his dread, he resumed the thread of his prayers, and he said, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gajendra, elephant king, in danger's grip, his mind stripped of arrogance, his history unzipped, recalled mantras from a previous life, stripped away his attachment like a knife. Formerly came to Indradumna in elephant form, yet his prayers echoed, weathering the storm. Mantras resurfacing from the past, awakening transcendental memories, awakening memories, transcendental sound, awakening memories profound. Even if devotee falls from the path, Krishna, the heart keeps track. At the right time, will take up the slack, will carry what you lack. He will get you back home, back to Godhead. So chant Hare Krishna, the Maha Mantra's call. In this life or the next, it will never fail. Once it's sown, the bhakti creeper will grow. Sooner or later, you will go back home, back to Godhead. Even if a devotee falls from the path, Krishna, the heart keeps track. At the right time, will take up the slack, will carry what you lack. He will get you back home, back to Godhead. That's about it for today. Seems like I've noticed out of the corner of my eye that Dr. Brett's been very active. His comments are like, I don't want to stop the flow of what I'm saying to interrupt it, but I do notice that a lot of things coming. So let's see here. Okay, fantastic over absurd is always preferred. Krishna's pastimes may seem fantastic to someone who waxes scholastic, but to the transcendentalist with love of the source, the wonderful pastimes of Krishna are nectar, of course. Nice. We also have Britta. She says, "Oh no, terribly sorry you had a run-in with the Utah County Atheistic Society." You're right, though. Taking off that last zinger is good advice. I sure need to keep that in mind. I probably would still have several friends in my life if I could remember that sage advice. Me too. Me too. Yeah, it's good advice. Both you and I need to heed it more carefully moving forward. After 78 years, I might have learned a thing or two. Whether I've at the point where I can apply it, that's the jury's still out on that one. But I've learned, at least when I'm writing emails, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good about going back and erasing the last couple sentences. But in the heat of oratory, the heat of communication, it's much more difficult to bite your tongue when you should and not run off at the mouth longer, after you've made your point, then zip it up. That's a theoretical truth. Now let's see who can apply it, including the 78-year-old birthday boy here. Kelly from Idaho. Thank you, Kelly. Always appreciate Kelly's comments. He's a Patreon member, donor, the proud owner of a new set of Srimad Bhagavatams. We appreciate you, Kelly. Bye, Bobby. Looking forward to spending a little time with Bye Bobby on my special day today. What makes it special is that Bye Bobby and I can go off for a few hours together. Happy birthday, Britta says. Happy birthday from Brent. Malini Preeti, I haven't heard from you for ages, all the way from Malaysia. Thank you for your birthday wishes. Lee Lavati, thank you for your birthday wishes. Thank you all for joining us on this Motivational Monday, the day when my body saw the light of day from my mother's womb. For whatever it's worth, I certainly appreciate your good wishes on this day. We'll be back tomorrow, Transcendental Tuesday, with more on the amazing, fantastic appearances of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose powers eclipse those even of the great demigods like Lord Brahma and Shiva. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.